Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Friday football show in advance of Steelers versus Bears. I'm Tim Benz with Mike DeCourcy here on Trib Live. Glad you were with us. We are brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Meet me at Mike's just across the street from PNC Park. Get yourself a steak on a stone. Try one of their many rotating taps, 80 of them, 500 available craft beers. Anytime you want to go somewhere for Pittsburgh sports viewing, pregame for Pittsburgh sports action, go to Mike's on the North Shore. As we get ready for the Bears and Steelers on Sunday, also college football abound. Pitt has a big game coming up. Mike, I know you're in the midst of college basketball season 2. First and foremost, I will ask you, as part of your duties for the Big Ten Network, did you have to stay up for Troy and USC and triple overtime last night?
I did not, but pretty amazing that it did have to go to triple overtime for there to be a result. Very impressive by
wild finish. If people haven't seen the video, I retweeted it. You got to see the buzzer beater at the end in triple overtime. It's crazy.
Absolutely. I did get to see Purdue last night play against Memphis, where I used to live and cover that team. So I am into college basketball at this stage, but as we convene on Friday morning, my head is in the game, Tim, and the game is Bears versus Steelers.
And Mike, as we get ready to start talking about this game, I will reiterate the point that I made at Trib Live earlier in the week. For folks who don't know the backstory on the history between the Steelers and the Bears in the great city of Chicago, there have been as many Allied troop victories since 1936 in Europe as there have been Steelers wins over the Bears in Chicago. One time they have won against the Bears in Chicago. I will classify, qualify, differentiate against the Bears in Chicago. As it was pointed out to me, they had beaten the Chicago Cardinals since then more than once. But if you've got to make a Chicago Cardinals reference, Mike, that's not often enough you've beaten the Bears in Chicago. Bottom line, if you need to feel better by looking at the Cardinals record, you're not doing something right. The Steelers have done a lot wrong there in their trips to Chicago. So can they do better this time? That's how we start talking about this game. Bears, Steelers. It's our weekly view from Mount Washington as we get ready to talk about the game. Our 30,000-foot big picture view, state of the Steelers heading into game day. Mike, where do you want to start?
Well, I think we're both going to start in the same place, Tim. It's the obvious question that the Steelers are facing this week. What do you do about the quarterback position with Aaron Rodgers now carrying around a broken left wrist in some form? Exactly how fractured it is, of course, we don't know, and we don't need to know. We just need to know that he's not whole, so to speak. And I was thinking about this as I was getting ready for the show. I was thinking about the old joke, Doctor, will I be able to play quarterback well after with this broken wrist, after you protect the broken wrist? And the doctor says, well, I don't see any reason why not. And the patient says, well, that's great, because I haven't been very good at this at all lately.
At least the last 6 quarters anyway.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. When I said lately, I mean lately. This is not to condemn his first 7 or 8 performances, but the last two games, one game and one half, that's 15 total possessions when the game was competitive, not the end of game Roman Wilson touchdown against the Chargers, but the game's competitive, and not counting like the kneel downs or whatever at the end of the half against the Chargers. So 15 drives. Negative outcome on 73% of those drives. 80% if you count the time that they settled for after the Jonnu Smith ruled catch that was ruled incompletion. After that, they settled for a field goal, and Boz missed it. So 80% in that circumstance. 1 safety, 1 turnover on downs, 2 picks, 7 punts. It is not happening right now, and that was before he broke his wrist. So I am very concerned about the idea of sending Aaron Rodgers out on the field as the starting quarterback in that circumstance. Hasn't been good when healthy the last 2 games. And okay, so this is against the Chargers, who are a very capable football team, and the Bengals, who have the worst defense in the league. And there are conversations about whether it's the worst defense ever. So, and certainly the version that doesn't include Trey Hendrickson is in that conversation. And he puts up one touchdown drive, then punt. I mean, come on. I do not believe that is the correct path to go, regardless of how many games he won when he was MVP caliber as the quarterback of the Packers in Chicago.
Well, I agree with you in theory that if he's really being pushed to start, and when I say pushed, either by the team or by himself to start, if he's being pushed, then that shouldn't be the case. They should go with Mason Rudolph because I think he's a capable backup, and I don't think anybody anticipated getting a full 17 out of Aaron Rodgers. I think we all thought he'd be hurt at some point or another. So NFC team on the road, this seems to make sense as a logical spot if you had to go to your backup to do it and do it with a free conscience. However, this is you and I talking. This is people listening. This is people, if they want to comment, can make that comment. I don't think we're thinking like they're thinking on the South Side right now. I think they're thinking if it's 50-50, it's not. It's got to be like 30-70 for Mike Tomlin to go to Mason Rudolph. And that's not a knock on Rudolph. That's how they view the acquisition of Aaron Rodgers and the circumstances they're in. It's November. It's Rodgers in Chicago. It's Rodgers' personality. It's the ramifications of benching Rodgers if they lose, and maybe worse, it's the ramification of benching Rodgers if they win. You know, they got a one-game lead on the Baltimore Ravens here, Mike. This is strictly from their point of view, I think, about if Rodgers can play with this injury or not. It's not about parsing Rodgers' stats versus those of Mason Rudolph in the sample size of whatever you want to give Mason Rudolph. His half against the Bengals, going back to his time in 2023 when he led them to the playoffs, it's not about parsing those stats to them. It's about, can Rodgers handle it physically and protect himself? And that's it. And frankly, I don't blame him for having that point of view, because if, like I said before, you sit him and they lose, you're going to hear about it from the fans and from Rodgers, passive aggressively or aggressive aggressively. He's going to bring it up. And then, like I said, then if you don't play him and you win at this point, you got a situation on your hands with Mason Rudolph and people wanting to clamor for him to start. Whether that's smart or not, dumb or not, it's reality. And I think because of that, in their minds, it's going to be 50-50 unless he physically can't protect himself, take a snap, fend off a defender that's coming in his face because Broderick Jones blew a block or something like that. You're going to see Mason Rudolph unless you're going to see Aaron Rodgers unless you absolutely can't.
Yeah, I look at it and say, okay, after the Chargers game, you write it off. You say, okay, 1 week road trip, maybe he was tired, whatever. The night game, he wasn't as sharp. Okay, but Sunday at home, 1 o'clock, the worst defense in the league, and it's punt. That's not good enough. And that was before he's hurt. That's with 2 good wrists. I know what you're saying. Everything you say is true. If the Steelers were to win with Mason Rudolph, now you've got a situation. And I know that they really would rather not have situations. But the situation is you have got a quarterback who has a broken left wrist. And he wasn't playing well before he was injured. So why would we believe that a compromised Aaron Rodgers is going to play at the level necessary for them to start winning football games and to start moving the football in the way that they hadn't for the game and a half prior to the injury? I totally understand what you're saying, and I think that's. I know we all know. We've watched Mike for nearly 2 decades. We know how he operates, and we know what he wants to do. But sometimes you have to make the decision based on what's the smart play, and the smart play, given the injury and given his recent performances, is to make the move. Not because I'm sitting here, although I respect what Mace did at the end of 2023, and I thought that he was very good and energized. He energized the offense in a way that we hadn't seen for a while. The way I describe it, Tim, is that I felt like Aaron was fighting his offense, his teammates. Not literally, and not just because every now and then he'd make a face or say something after a play didn't work, but you could see a lack of comfort between him and his teammates that would be expressed in some of what I said, in how he would react if he did have somebody in his kitchen, in some of his throws that should have been better, but were not because he wasn't comfortable. And then Mace came in there, and what did you see? It was like the sun came out. Like all of a sudden there's this comfort in the offense. And I know it wasn't very many possessions because of the way the second half played out. But there was that comfort that you saw that you had not seen in a long time between the quarterback and the rest of his offensive teammates.
All right, I want you to comment. What do you think, folks? What should the Steelers do? What will the Steelers do with their quarterback situation? That's our big picture look going ahead to the Bears game on Sunday. Time now for our keys to victory. We give you an offensive key, a defensive key, and then we throw a bonus key in there as well. I think we're going to stick with the quarterback theme, the both of us to some extent or another for offense. So I'll go first. I'm going to say keep the ball out of harm's way, but don't avoid the middle of the field. You got to walk that line here, because when it comes to, especially if it's Mason Rudolph that has to play at one point or another to start or to go in, you don't want to funnel everything to the outside and make it predictable for the defense. But you have to be careful with the football against the Bears. They lead the NFL in takeaways with 22. And I know they've got Byard in the middle. Edmonds, a linebacker who's got 4 interceptions. You got to be careful of all that stuff. I get it. But if it is Rudolph, look at how well Rudolph played, throwing the ball over the middle on those clear out routes. They had guys going deep, and they opened up things. Again, Mike, I'll reiterate before you do. It was the Bengals defense. I'm sure the Bears are smarter than that, can handle it better than the Bengals, although their defense isn't great either. We'll get into that a little bit later on. But to the biggest point that I wanted to get to about the passing game, you just can't lock yourself into the outside because you're concerned about what might happen in the middle of the field. You got to be smart. You can't take risks. You can't give the Bears a chance to pick off footballs because they will do it at great extent and to great success. Just be smart with your throws in the middle of the field. Don't ignore it.
Yeah, I think that's also emphasized by the fact that, I mean, we won't know 100% until after the Bears put out their injury report later this afternoon, Friday afternoon. But the Bears inside linebackers are really banged up. They had 3 that have been mostly absent from practice.
I think Byard actually was banged up too. I don't know if he practiced yesterday or not. I didn't look. We're taping this up on Friday before their practice report is out, but yeah.
So that's I mean, going to the tight ends over the middle, something that the Steelers should be doing more of anyway. And now maybe with the injuries to the Bears linebackers, excuse me, maybe that provides an opportunity for me. Same zip code, different address. My point is that you have to protect the quarterback. If it's Aaron Rodgers out there, and if you are Broderick Jones or you are Mason McCormick, you have to play this game like you know that keeping the defense out of the backfield, that's like your whole career. Like your whole career rides on that play every time that this happens over the course of Sunday afternoon. We've seen players rise to the occasion, and the occasion this time is your quarterback can't get hit. I mean, if it's Aaron Rodgers, and I think we both believe it will be, if it's Aaron Rodgers, your quarterback cannot get hit. I mean, not. You can't say not at all, but not at all. They really have to make sure he's clean because
you know what? And to help out, Mike, I would put in by extension then a lot more Jaylen Warren, because we'll get into the running back debate a little bit later on, I'm sure too. But Gainwell's a good third down blocker. Warren's a great third down blocker.
Yes.
And for as much as everybody's falling in love with Darnell Washington's pass catching ability and run after the catch in recent weeks, still the best thing he does is block. So you might see Darnell Washington kept in to block a bunch to help out for the exact reasons you're talking about.
Yeah, I keep thinking about what you see when TJ Watt comes around the edge on one of his better rushes and throws that hammer punch. And can you imagine what that would feel like if you are playing in a game with a broken wrist and you get that? I think that's one of my concerns about playing Aaron is it's not so much whether or not it would get injured more, but how that discomfort of being hammered anyway, if it gets to that, how when you hold the ball, I mean, we see guys fumble because it jars the ball loose, it hurts, whatever. We see when TJ does that, we see it, and then you compound that with the broken wrist. So I really believe that of all the games, and I'm a believer as well, Tim, that like you can't expect a clean pocket on every trip. And that's something that Aaron, that's when I talked about Aaron fighting it a little bit. He sometimes performs as if he expects a clean pocket on every trip. And I mean, we saw last night Josh Allen get sacked. I think the final
6.
total was 8, but it might have slipped over to 9.
Or did it get to 9? I know. I saw last I checked in, it was 6. I thought that was enough.
On the final drive, he got sacked 2 to 3 times. I mean, it was bizarre.
8. We're getting 8 was the official
8.
number. All
yeah.
Right.
So I mean, it just shows you it's not just Broderick Jones that everybody beats up on for every now and then allowing somebody to intrude on the backfield. Like, this is the league. There are great pass rushers out there. So you've got to do the job up front at a level that even is maybe a little bit beyond your custom.
My defensive key is use the 3 outside linebacker look more often. I wouldn't just use it as a changeup. I might use it a little bit closer. Well, maybe still a changeup, but you can bring that fastball bunch too, you know. I mean, that'd be fine by me to use those 3 guys, whoever the 3 are. Sawyer's part of what's making this 3 linebacker look work now is Sawyer's finding his way some. I don't think he's maybe quite what some Steelers fans want him to be yet. I don't think he's quite what Alex Highsmith is, as much as people want to make that leap. So I'm of the opinion that although it catches people off guard because they don't have as much tape on it and they always aren't as ready for it, use it more because it's just effective when you do it. Like, Look at that Duggar pick. That Duggar pick happened because Flacco was pressured. Sawyer provided some push from the right side. TJ Watt took on 2 guys on the left side, and exploiting that was Herbig, who lined up right next to TJ, went down 2 gaps, went up where the center used to be, shot through, got right in Flacco's face, affected the throw, and Duggar had an easy catch and run back the other way. Like, the 3 linebacker look was the reason why Duggar made that pick 6. I want to see that more often. I don't know how effective that'll be this week against Caleb Williams, who's a mobile quarterback,
right,
and has only been sacked something like 16 times so far this year. It's one of the lowest sack totals in the league. But you got to get to him. You got to hurry up the clock. Even if you don't get him or get him down, you got to make him think and process faster. I think you can get mistakes out of Williams that way, even though they're a very good team when it comes to not giving the ball away. Try to make them give you the ball by making the processing part happen. Get those 3 linebackers out there together and get after the quarterback.
Yeah, for me, it all happens behind that. And we have to see on Sunday what we saw this past Sunday against the best core of wide receivers in the league. The Steelers did what no one thought that they were capable of doing, maybe even themselves to an extent. They completely shut down Higgins and Chase. Higgins did get a touchdown, one fairly long play, a mid-range play around 35 yards or whatever it was. And he got that touchdown. But for the most part, the 2 of them were completely shut down. And it was in large part to our last week's pick to take flight, promoting the Mike's Beer Bar Flight Night. We both went with James Pierre, and he flew doubly. He not only flew in coverage, shutting down those 2, helping to shut down those 2 receivers, but he also picked up that fumble and then flew literally into the end zone head over heels. He was outstanding, and that brings up the one item of alarm that happened in this week's press conference when Mike Tomlin was asked about Darius Slay and if he's done with his concussion protocol, whether he would be back in the lineup. And his response was yes. And that, like, you could see the fireworks going off all around Steeler Nation. Like, how can you put that guy back out there when you've just seen what James Pierre is capable of doing? Remember, a week ago, I talked about, and I think you believe this, the concern that Brandon Echols had played in the slot the previous week against the Chargers, got lit up pretty good. And he had gone from part-time excellence to full-time struggles. And would that happen with James Pierre? James Pierre went from part-time excellence to full-time excellence. And so you don't want him to go back to part-time anything after that performance.
Well, not for a guy who was full-time bad like Slay had been since he got here. And, maybe Pierre's sort of the defensive version of Mason Rudolph, a guy who figured it out in his late 20s instead of coming in and making a huge splash in his early 20s, as much as we wanted that to be the case. It just might take him a little time. He's still a very good athlete. He's still very spry and limber. And now maybe it's kind of calculating in his head more. And I think that's akin to what we're seeing with Mason Rudolph now. A guy's figuring it out as he goes along in a very complicated position for both of them. So I would prefer to see Pierre out there for sure. I don't want to see deference to the veteran just because it's convenient to do that. I don't want to see Tomlin fall in love with the back of his football card. And I keep saying, Philadelphia is a rough sports town. I get it, but they seem to like Darius Slay as a guy. They seem to appreciate what he did to help them win a Super Bowl and for all the years of service that he had with them as an Eagle. But I didn't see any weeping tears when Slay left Philadelphia. It was like, all right, thanks for your time here. Appreciate it. Go get another contract somewhere else. We got better, younger guys in the secondary. So he came here, and I was not finding on Twitter, oh my God, this is going to put the Steelers over the top from people who watched him play every week. So I think they knew that they squeezed every bit of blood from that stone. And now the Steelers are trying to get even more. And I think they're going to be the ones that wind up with blood on their hands here if he plays. I think this is nothing but good news for DJ Moore and Rome Odunze.
One of the things that Mike said that was really pushing the line of spin on Tuesday was that if you're the rookie or the untested guy, the backup, whatever, they're going to throw at you a lot. And then he said, and you're going to get a lot of passes defensed. And that's not true. You get passes defensed if you defend the passes. You know what happens if you don't defend the passes? What happened to Darius Slay for most of the first 6 to 7 weeks of the season? You get burned over and over. That's what happens if they throw it at you. And that's what the opponents were doing to Darius Slay, even though he's got a Super Bowl ring on his hand from just 11 months ago, 10 months ago. I look at it and say, like, it's nice to have Darius Slay now as a backup. The guy's been in the league forever. He does have that fresh championship. He does have the knowledge that he can help impart. And if somebody goes down, at least you've got a guy who's been in an NFL game before. But I don't give him many of the snaps that were going to James Pierre last week until James shows me that was a fluke. I don't think it was, but I have to see it was a fluke before I change back.
Well, my bonus key is going to be if you get behind, and you could, for the reasons that we're talking about. We haven't talked a ton yet about the Bears offense, but they're running the ball well, and Williams looks like he's on the uptick, and they got an offensive mind as a coach who seems to be doing a good job in Ben Johnson. If you get behind, this is still a defense in Chicago that's, in the mid-20s in rush defense, in total defense. Don't get away from your stuff. Don't stop running, especially with a banged-up quarterback or your backup in there, and get one-dimensional against the Bears with, like I said, a turnover-happy defense on the other side of the ball that's looking for picks and has managed to secure a bunch of them. Stay running the football. If you got to run your way back into this game, run your way back into this game because it's not impossible to do.
Absolutely. My bonus key is continue to do the small things. There was a play I thought that got very little attention by Nick Herbig on the pick that we mentioned earlier by Kyle Duggar. You cited the fact that Nick had gone through on that stunt through the middle, pressured Flacco. So then the ball gets picked. So at that point where Herbig was, he was a little bit past the quarterback, having rushed past Flacco, and the offensive line started to come toward him. As a result of the interception and Duggar starting to curl toward the left sideline. And it would have been so easy and so tempting for Herbig to just pick one of them off and risk having a blindside block call against him. And what he did instead was he read where Duggar was on his return, and he said, you know what? In so many words, in a flash of a second, he said, I think that he's going to beat them around the corner. Let's go do business down. He turns and he goes downfield and he finds the tight end running toward him. Now he makes a clean legal block that is the final block for the touchdown. And that block got some attention, but the decision not to go off and pick off one of the offensive linemen, that was the smart play. And the Steelers made a few plays in the game that we may get into against the Bengals that weren't totally smart. And this is an example of making the right move. I don't blame Darius Slay for what he did after he was spat upon by Jamar Chase.
Ramsey.
Excuse me, Jalen Ramsey. My bad.
Yeah.
I don't blame Jalen Ramsey for what he did. I totally, like, there is no playbook in life for getting spit upon. There's none. And so, as Mike said on Tuesday, do what comes natural. And but he had just been flagged.
Yeah, it's not about getting spit on. It's about being there in the first place to be spat upon.
Yes.
And that's why I like Tomlin's answer on Sunday more than I liked his answer on Tuesday, because his answer on Tuesday, first of all, didn't answer the question. The question was, did you want Ramsey to be somewhere else besides within 2 inches of Jamar Chase's face at that point after he just gotten the penalty? The answer to that question 101 times out of 100 should be yes. He should have been somewhere else because, like you just said, he had gotten a penalty within 2 seconds prior to that.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a fair call against him to get flagged when you are the one that getting your helmet pushed off your face. I didn't think it was necessarily a fair call, but it happened. And it had happened 15 seconds earlier. Well, actually, technically 45 seconds earlier.
Whatever Jamar Chase gets, not spitting, but whatever he gets in terms of literal pushback and face mask grasping, he deserves that because he's one of the biggest trash talkers in the league. He said he wanted to swim in those waters. So, like,
nothing wrong with trash talking, though. It's
AJ Green. He made AJ Green lose his mind that one time. Like, AJ Green never does that.
But my point is that even if you feel that the call against you on the previous play was unjustified, it still happened. And you still know the consequences of a second of those in any form. And so after that whole episode where the Bengals tried to fake the going for it and trying to draw the Steelers offside to get that last half yard, et cetera, he shouldn't have been anywhere near Jamar Chase at that point. Your trash talk had worked. Jamar Chase at that point had 2 catches for 14 yards. You've done your job.
Right.
Just make sure you clear out, see whether they come back out and try to do it again or actually punt the ball. We still don't know what they would have done there. But you've done your job. That was a victory. The fact that they tried to fake you and you didn't go as a team, that was a victory moment, and he turned it into a defeat moment, and the Steelers were fortunate to be able to shut that down the rest of the way. So do the little things, the Nick Herbig thing and the thing that Jalen Ramsey did not do in that instance. Again, no problem with once it happened, what he did, but he shouldn't have been in that particular confrontation at that particular point.
All right, those are our keys to the game. Let us know what you think your keys are to victory for the Steelers against the Bears. You can post them. We're going to get some comments. Got a bunch before the show I'm going to get to, as well as whatever we get during the show. So go ahead and post those, and we'll get to them as the program rolls along. Time now for On the Other Sideline. Here's a theme to preview this week's opponent. And I think I'm going to go kind of big picture. If there's a view from Mount Washington, I don't know, maybe a view from the Sears Tower or something as it relates to the Bears. Don't get cozy because you're in first place. That would be my message to the Bears, and hopefully the message within the locker room from their point of view. You know, it's really thin right now in the NFC. That line between being in great shape and being out of the playoff picture. Like, they're 7-3. Green Bay's 6-3-1. Detroit is 6-4. The Lions host the Giants. The Packers host the Vikings. They'll probably both win. 2 of the current wild card teams in San Francisco and Seattle, both of whom are out of the NFC West, they play Tennessee and Carolina respectively. Chicago right now leads the North with that 7-3 record. If they lose, they might be in 8th place come Monday morning and out of a playoff picture. Maybe Tuesday morning. One of those games might be the Monday night game. I'm forgetting right now, but you know what I mean. By the time next week's play starts, they might be out of the playoff bracket, whereas right now they're the 3 seed and leading the North. That's how thin the line is in the North. So if you get a team with a quarterback that has a broken wrist and shaky offensive prospects and a backup quarterback maybe playing and a questionable offensive line and a defense that still struggles to get off the field unless they create turnovers, and they haven't won there since 1995, you beat that team. That's what I'm saying to Chicago. Just be cognizant of where you really are in the standings as opposed to what it looks like right now on the Friday before the game.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. Absolutely. That's that. Although I would say the view from the Hancock Tower, I have some pictures of my wife and I.
Tower now? I'm sorry.
I have some pictures of my wife and I at the Hancock Tower. So it's the Hancock Tower is the one on Michigan Avenue. The Sears Tower, whatever they call it now, is down on the West Loop. Is that the South Loop? Something like that. Anyway, I should know better. I spent a lot of time in Chicago, but anyway, I've never been in the Sears Tower, but I have been in the Hancock Tower, and it was a pretty cool thing to be up there. Anyway, for me, the one thing I look at is like Caleb Williams is right now is a highlight show. Like if you look at the TV show highlight plays of Caleb Williams, you've got a lot to see. And of course, they're winning games. But past 3 games, he's having a little bit of trouble in terms of his accuracy, connections. At this point, over the last 3 games, hitting his targets at 55%. And if you haven't looked at the NFL stats lately, how good is 55%? Well, over the course of the full year to date, it would rank 35th in the league. It would be behind Cam Ward and ahead of only J.J. McCarthy. That's what 55% is over 3 games. He's hit the 60% mark only 1 time since the 3rd game of the year. So you can get him to be inaccurate. How do you do that? You mentioned we talked about it before. Make sure that you control the pocket. Make sure that he gets a hand in his face, a guy in his face. You may not be able to bring him down as much as you do a typical quarterback. But as they showed last Sunday, I think they only got to Flacco 1 time, but they forced him to throw inaccurately or less accurately with all the pressure they applied. So the Bears right now have to be more accurate than they've been to expect to be successful, both against the Steelers and against even more daunting opponents that are coming down the road for them. Their schedule is really difficult over the last couple of months.
Time now for our stat pack. This is where we find the most telling stat heading into this game. You can go first on this one, Mike. I got a couple queued up, so why don't you give us yours? Because I think yours is pretty germane to the conversation here.
Yeah, I looked it up, and the Bears are 24th in sacks and 23rd in QB hits from their defense to the opposing quarterback. And so it makes you wonder if it's safe to play Rodgers. Well, he won't face as much pressure as he ordinarily would, like if you were playing the Houston Texans. What I saw last night was unbelievable. The problem with that logic is that the Bengals ranked 29th in hits and 31st in sacks, and they're still the one that hit him enough, and maybe 1 time was enough to break his wrist. So you can't go into it and think, well, because of that, then Rodgers can play. You have to be sure that Rodgers is going to be able to hold on to the football and be more accurate and more comfortable than he's been over the last 2 weeks. I still have my doubts.
I want to go back for a quick second to your bonus key about doing the little things. And since you brought it up, it's part of what jogged my memory here is watching that game last night and seeing the Texans defense play the way that they did. You talked about the Herbig play where he didn't light a guy up and block him from behind. What almost cost the Texans was one of their return guys doing that. Did you see that? Where they blocked the offensive lineman? Actually, it was Knox. It was the tight end. Got blasted from behind. Didn't need the block. Completely obvious. Right in front of official. Brought a touchdown reception back. They ended up settling for a field goal, and that could have been the difference in the game if they didn't get the late pick from Allen. By the way, that pick from Allen, he had 2 guys open. He threw the ball in between them for the one place it couldn't go. I mean, I don't know what that was at the end. So he was not immune from criticism, even though things were crumbling around him. But I just wanted to dot the I's and cross the T's on your thought there, because there's another piece of evidence of what you were talking about with Herbig just last night in that game. And it could have cost the Texans in the big picture if it had gotten there and wasted that defensive effort. By the way, I don't have any children. If I did, I would give up my firstborn for just one of Donnell Hunter's biceps. My God, is that guy built? Like, I was watching that post-game interview. I'm like, is he carved or is that
Oh
a
my
human
gosh.
being? He is unbelievable.
Absolutely amazing.
All right, my stat pack, I got a couple of them here for you. The first one is 11-1. I mentioned the one. That's the number of Steelers victories in Chicago against the Bears in their history going back to 1936. 11 is the number of victories that Aaron Rodgers has in Chicago. Let's not fool ourselves. Aaron Rodgers wants to play in Chicago. He wants to beat those guys one more time before he retires. He wants to do the belt thing. He wants to do the I own you thing in a different uniform. He can't help himself. Maybe if this was a game, I don't know, pick against the Browns in Cleveland or the Cincinnati game or something like that. I mean, those are divisional games. If this is just a random Joe Schmo game, Rodgers may not push it as hard. He wants to go to Chicago and beat Chicago again.
Yeah. Jacksonville is the most random team
there you
in
go.
the NFL. So there you go. Yeah.
I think he wants to go there and get another victory against them. And I think that's part of the reason why he's pushing himself as hard as he is. I'll give you another stat. Thor. That is the most wins of any team that Chicago has beaten this year. A couple times against Minnesota and Dallas. There are other teams that they have vanquished. Washington, the Giants, Cincinnati, and Vegas. So their wins have come against bad teams. If this win would kind of be like, Mike, I think, when the Steelers beat Washington last year. Remember, they had built up a bunch of wins against bad teams. Like, all right, well, Washington's playing great. Let's see if the Steelers can get this win. The difference being Pittsburgh went on the road to do that. But, this would at least feel like much more of a worthy win for Chicago if they were to beat the Steelers. They're a division leader at this point.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense that they have not had the most difficult schedule. And we got a chance to see them play against the Browns and not, the Ravens and not the Lamar Jackson Ravens. They played against the Huntley Ravens. And they were unable to sustain excellence in that game at all. They started out really strong. They had a chance to go up 14-0, failed at that, settled for 10, if I remember correctly, and then crumbled the rest of the way. And Tyler Huntley pretty much took apart their defense. And so they have played teams that we consider to be contenders and not succeeded. And as I said before, they need this game because what's ahead of them becomes really, and the Steelers' schedule is really tough. But I would say that down the stretch, the Bears is even more difficult.
One more number for you. 6, the number of giveaways for Chicago this year. They don't just take the ball away. They don't give it back to you. I was trying to bring that point to light earlier. I'll illuminate it further here. Sacks and takeaways, that's what the Steelers defense thrives on. You can't count on either against this team. You're just going to have to get the Bears to punt sometimes, and you're going to have to win the field position battle better than you tend to do. You might have to win the time of possession battle better than you tend to do to beat the Bears. They're probably going to take the ball away from you. They're probably not going to give it back, and they're probably not going to allow you to get a lot of negative plays by sacking the quarterback. So you're just going to have to win up front, stop DeAndre Swift, stop the collective run game that they've got. They've got a good run attack, just cognitively, to hear the players talking about it all week. Their principles, how they block it up, regardless of who the back is, they're good at it. So they're going to have to counter that and just get the Bears to punt and not do it from close to midfield. So they're looking at 90 yards to cover with Mason or a banged up Aaron Rodgers. I think that's a big number here. Is not just how much they take it away, but how little they give it back based on how the Steelers need to win defensively more often than not.
Absolutely. That differential turnover is the most underrated stat in the NFL because it's not sexy in a lot of ways. It's not one where you can be, well, how can you allow them to gain all these yards? Why didn't you intercept is a lot more, it's an odd question. And so people don't focus on it enough. But turnover differential is a huge factor. The best teams usually have great turnover differentials. The poor teams usually have poor ones.
Okay, so if you want to give us any sort of thoughts on that, you can email as well, tbenz@TribLive. I can get my emails. I've got a bunch of emails already. You can tweet me at TimBenz. PGH. I'm looking ahead here. Yeah, let's get to our who will take flight next, Mike. Why don't you go first for who will take flight? And
Yeah.
this, of course, for Flight Night at Mike's. Don't forget Flight Night at Mike's for Monday Night Football. You can get yourself a sample of all of their beers that they have on tap, 80 rotating taps, and you can get one of their 500 available craft beers. Get yourself a steak on a stone. Monday Night Football, interesting one in the NFC. Carolina, San Francisco, two teams who I thought would be worse off than what they are right now. Two teams that are better off than what I anticipated, especially with the injuries in San Francisco. So you can watch that game, and you can get yourself a flight at Mike's. All right, who's going to take flight this week for you, Mike?
I have Muth, Pat Fryermuth, having a big day in the middle of the field. We talked about before the absence of the potential absence of some of the Bears' inside linebackers and the need to continue to emphasize that part of the passing game, which too often drifts out of the game plan or out of the execution of the game plan. But Pat Fryermuth has shown time and again he's an exceptional pass catcher, and this seems like a good week for him to take off. And then on the Bears side, after what the Steelers were able to do to options 1 and 1A against the Bengals, I mentioned before, the Bears are very strong in that position. They also have the player that I believe, at least to date, is the most talented wide receiver, third wide receiver they'll have faced, Luther Burden, grandson of the late Luther Ticky Burden, who I remember as a basketball player at Utah and for a while in the NBA, an All-American, terrific basketball player. Well, Luther III was an outstanding wide receiver at University of Missouri. He's a rookie now. He's got great ability, and you don't want, if you're the Steelers, you don't want him to have a breakout game. But I feel like that he's got 19 catches for 13.1 average so far this year. He's a guy that could sneak into that gap that the other two receivers provide by drawing attention away.
See, I kind of went the different direction on the receiver front. I went with a Dunzier, but I mean this for whoever Slay is going to cover. If Slay is really going to play as much as they are suggesting, I can't see that going great. So I'll go with a Dunzier or more, whoever they find that they try to match up with Slay. For the Steelers, I'm going to go with Patrick Queen. I thought quietly he had a pretty decent game last week and so far. Now I have to go back and watch more cleanly who was responsible for some of the Chase Brown runs. But I think this week, with the way their rush approach is, Queen's going to have to clean up a lot at the second level. And if they win, it's going to be because I think he does a good job of that. And he led the team with 10 tackles. There's a lot of other guys you can throw flowers at from last week's game, and we have already so far wrapping it up from the Bengal game. I don't know if he got enough credit for last week. I kind of like the game that he had. So I'm going to say Patrick Queen for this week against the Bears. We'll see how that goes. But, the linebackers in general, I thought played an important role. That Chase Brown thing, I think, was big, Mike, because an underlying theme for why they were so bad in the second half against the Bengals on that Thursday night is they got so spooked by what Chase Brown did with a couple runs. It was just a couple runs, and they panicked, they bugged. They admitted it, that they reacted to what Chase Brown was doing, and that took him out of their defense. And Queen actually, maybe why he was top of mind for me, he was the one that gave us the quote in the post-game locker room. It's just, learning what they do on defense and understanding that the other team occasionally makes plays, so you don't have to do counter to what they're doing all the time, is basically what he was saying. I thought that was a key point as to why. Like, Chase Brown got his again against the Steelers. Chase Brown put up pretty good numbers. It's probably the second best game of the year, aside from what he did against the Steelers the first time. Right. But they didn't bug out and get away from what they were trying to do on the edges and on the outside with the receivers and bringing everybody in the box to try to stop Chase Brown. They kept those guys higher, and look what happened. They didn't get out of their mode because Brown popped a couple. They remembered who the more dangerous guys were on that Cincinnati Bengal offense. I thought that was a key reason why they ended up winning that football game.
Absolutely. And also, another key is that since they played them the first time, they have two new safeties. And that played a big role in why they were able to be successful covering Chase and Higgins.
All right, let's get to around the league, some nuggets from across the NFL. And we kind of already talked about one, which is the Bills losing last night to the Texans. One developing situation there is kind of the depth in the AFC South, which is something I never thought I would say. But Let's see how it manifests again when we're talking about this next week. They continue to have teams that are in the playoff mix this deep into the calendar, which I did not anticipate. And like Houston is staying afloat. Jacksonville is staying afloat. Indianapolis is still right now the best team in the conference, but second best team in the conference behind the Broncos. We'll talk about them a little bit later on too. But, so the Bills are running out of time to win the East. Like they better start playing catch up here, or else they're going to have to be a wild card and come to Pittsburgh or go to Indy or go to New England to play the Patriots, because the Patriots might win the division.
Right.
Based on how the Bills are failing to make up ground. And the same thing for the Chiefs. The Chiefs are running out of time, and the Chiefs are running out of math. Now, at 5-5, they can still get to 8 wins, you would think, pretty easily. Dallas, Vegas, and the Tennessee Titans. All right, so there's your 8, okay? But their other remaining games are Indy, Houston, the Chargers, and Denver. All at home.
Wow.
But they can't go worse than 2-3 in those games and may have to go 3-2.
That is an interesting situation for the Chiefs. They seem to find a way, just as Patrick Mahomes so often finds a way to dodge that last pass rusher that's at his ankles. They do seem to find a way out, and maybe all those home games are the difference and them finding their way into the playoffs. But I think what we see is, with the way it has developed, is that somebody pretty good's going to miss. And somebody with a pretty big rep and somebody with a pretty good track record. I mean, and I can't tell you who it's going to be. It could be Baltimore, it could be the Chiefs, it could be the Bills. But somebody, it could be Houston. Somebody pretty good's going to miss, because there's not room for everybody that's a quality football team in the AFC. And if you look at the intersection between the AFC and NFC over the course of this year, I mean, I don't know what the numbers are. I just know that every time I see Tampa play somebody in the AFC, they get squished.
And when you say somebody good is going to miss, I don't think you mean the second team in the AFC North, because that team may not be all that good, but that second team in the AFC North is probably going to miss too.
Yeah, but I mean, that team will have been either the Steelers, who had the lead for a lot of the time, and will have defeated 2 of the top seeds in the conference, or the Ravens, who have.
I'm saying it's going to be one of those teams plus one more good team that's going to miss.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely, and I mean, now they both may find a way, and you don't know what's going to happen. I don't expect it. No, I don't expect it. I think I said
games against each other
on this show a month ago, maybe more. I said that I thought that you may need to win this division to get in the playoffs, and I think that that's being proven out more week after week.
What's yours? I know you wanted to bring up George Pickens, right?
Yeah, I mean, I saw people discussing the Pickens trade this week, and then one of our favorite listeners, Yinzergear, tweeted that he couldn't believe that this George Pickens discussion got any traction. And I'm like, what exactly is he talking about? And then I found the context that he was speaking about, and that was podcast host Kay Adams, who used to host the Good Morning Football show on the NFL Network, talked about how she thought that the Pickens trade will go down as one of the worst in NFL history. And I was really shocked by that statement, because it overlooks the fact that he was traded because his situation in Pittsburgh had become untenable, that they felt like they could no longer tolerate his behavior, his approach to being a professional. It certainly was never about his ability. It's not like they traded him because they thought that he wasn't good enough. I mean, he clearly was. They knew what he was capable of doing, but they just decided that they couldn't tolerate it anymore. And they got in exchange for that exactly what they expected they would get if he were to play out this season as a Steeler and then go into free agency. And maybe they'll be off by a round if he goes out and cashes a huge check with somebody. I don't really know the formula for that, how that all works. The guys who do Steelers and NFL every day understand that. I will confess that as a columnist, as an analyst, I don't really know how that formula works. I just know that they would have gotten a compensatory pick if he spent 2025 with the Steelers. But they were never going to re-sign him. They aren't going to invest that much money into.
And he wasn't going to play on the franchise tag either. That's a big part of this calculus.
Yeah, but there was no way they would have done that. He would have spent one more year here, and then he would have left for a compensatory pick. As I said, it would definitely have been a third rounder, and I don't know. Maybe the math says he could have been a second. I don't know, but that's all they traded away was this season. And in all likelihood, if the Cowboys haven't completely lost the plot, and who's to say they haven't, he probably won't spend more than a year in Dallas either, because they've already committed long-term to number 88. So why would you then put more money into another wide receiver to complement CeeDee Lamb? We've seen how that's worked out for the Bengals. The Bengals have the best wide receiver combo in the AFC and a defense that can't stop the three of us, you, me, and Chris producing. So I just don't see why she would have put that trade into that. Is there an argument that they could have or should have kept him? Because the difference is he plays for a year and you get a third round. He doesn't play for you for a year and you get a third round. Yeah, there's an argument. But I think the Steelers showed that, knowing that, they still made the deal because they just couldn't deal with it anymore.
Well, I still hold them responsible for not getting something in return for Pickens for this year, because, whatever deal I would have rather seen them get a fourth rounder this year and then felt the comfort of using a third rounder on a wide receiver, thinking you could get another pass rusher in the fourth round instead of Sawyer, or still go ahead and get Sawyer and then use the other pick on a wide receiver in the fourth round. Whatever permutation you want to use. They didn't replace Pickens again, and they went through the whole song and dance that they were okay with it, while at the same time trying to replace Pickens. That's the maddening thing. It happened last year with Deontay Johnson. They kept telling you they were fine, while at the same time they were working to get Brandon Ayuk and then eventually Christian Kirk and any other name you wanted to throw out there, Slayton, Sutton in Denver, all these other names from last year that we've tried hard to forget because it's all we talked about for 3 months. But they were saying one thing and doing the other. This year, they were saying one thing and doing, it's all about the tight ends. The tight ends will be the number 2 receiver. The only one they throw to anymore right now is Mount Washington, for God's sakes. Okay, and they were apparently trying to get receivers before the deadline this year, and the trades didn't happen, and Jacoby Myers is now a Jacksonville Jaguar. All right, so I think people are sick of the say one thing, do the other, and to also know then, if the best you could have done was to get the fourth rounder this year for Aaron Rodgers, I would prefer that as opposed to the third rounder next year for quarterback, whoever, that might just be used to package to trade up for another pick anyway. All right. So give me the tangible for this year as opposed to the intangible for next year, even if it is a round less. And frankly, it shouldn't have to be a round less. It's Jerry freaking Jones. He wanted the spectacular player. He wanted the guy he saw on his grandkids' Twitter. That's the guy. You could have gotten a third rounder for him this year. And I think for all the con artist memes that I've seen, boy, he can't get something done here on this attempt to get a second wide receiver or even a pick to become a second wide receiver. This has become a hill that he's dying on. This has become a blind spot for Omar to get done. So, worst trade in football history, hyperbole. Not looking great right now. 100% on, K. You got that part right. All right, let's get to our predictions, and let's get to a couple of responses as well. We'll get to Scott first. Scott sent a message about the AFC and particularly about the Denver Broncos. He says the Broncos are number 1. They might be right now. I don't know that they will be by the end of the AFC playoffs. In fact, I don't think that they will be. I still think the potential exists for these experienced AFC playoff teams to sneak into the playoffs and upset these kind of Johnny-come-lately, suddenly good division winners like in New England, in Indianapolis, in Denver, potentially. Denver might be the toughest putt because it's so hard to play there in the playoffs. Everybody knows this. And Peyton's a Super Bowl winning coach. That might be a little bit of an X factor. But I still see those teams as more vulnerable against the playoff competition they're likely to face than what is normally the case when you see a playoff bracket unfold.
Which I think is what is going to make these NFL playoffs not the most exciting, but the most fascinating. Last few years, okay, when are the Bills going to play the Chiefs? Where are they going to play? And that's the team that's probably going to the Super Bowl, et cetera, et cetera. We may have that game at some point in these playoffs. We don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but we also know that they are not coming in. I mean, they are not coming into these playoffs with the best seeds. The math is getting harder and harder for them to get there. And their performances are making it less and less likely that they could somehow go on some sort of 7-game, 6-game rampage and wind up with a 1 or 2 seed. And so I think that we go into these playoffs and it's, okay, who's going to win this? A little bit like you go into the NCAA men's basketball tournament and you say, okay, which of the number 1 seeds is going to go out first? Which of them has the goods to make the Final Four? And which of them has the stuff to win it all? Is there somebody back in the field that could do it? That's part of what makes that tournament so fascinating every March. And I think that these playoffs will be a little like that.
Steve says, so Darius Slow is in the starting lineup again. Can't wait. Why not give his snaps to somebody who has proven that they deserve this? You know what? I see that line, and I think, Mike, back to Dale Lally, who I used to do the pregame show with the Steelers, who sadly passed away early in the season. By the way, it was Dale's birthday yesterday. But he always used to say, you're allowed to get better. Like when Steelers fans would have an early snapshot thought of what a player was not good enough, you're allowed to get better. And I wonder if maybe Tomlin is guilty of that here with Pierre. Certainly has been with Mason Rudolph. Like they keep turning him loose to free agency and then they bring him back because they can't find anybody better. And it's clear Mason has gotten better. That's just a backup quarterback. But for a starting corner, maybe you're allowed to get better. And also maybe they need to realize that Slay isn't what he used to be. And maybe the notion of trying to get him previously when he was a free agent, being unable to do so or swing a trade, now that they were able to do so, they're not getting the same guy. You got to let go that maybe this one player in Pierre is better than who you have tabbed him to be. And maybe Darius Slay isn't what he used to be when you decide to get him in free agency.
Yeah, I still wonder, and we'll wonder until we see Sunday, how much of that will be ceremonial and how much of that will be practical. Is it, okay, Darius, you're in the starting lineup, and then the first time he gives up a pass, okay, now it's James's job again. Or he's in the starting lineup, he takes one snap, and then, we're going to the nickel look, so we're going to bring James in, and then James stays in the rest of the way or whatever. I mean, that's a possibility. We know that he's going to honor his veterans, and Slay is the honored veteran. The old thing, do you lose a job because you got injured and all of that sort of stuff. And all that plays into the way Tomlin handles this publicly. But then on the field, who's getting the snaps? Who's getting the snaps on the big downs, the possession downs that Mike dwells on so much? I think that's what matters. And it does, if you're a fan, if you're a follower of the team, it does shake you up a little bit when you just watched what James Pierre did, something Darius Slay has not done in your uniform, not one time. He has not had a game like Pierre did on Sunday. And so it does give you that pause and like, what if he really means this? What if he really does put him out there all those snaps and then all of a sudden the pass defense is back where it was in Cincinnati 1? That does cause you concern. But then the game starts, and a lot of times that it really was just a statement that he made to honor the veteran, to honor the idea that you don't lose your job over injury, et cetera. We'll see. I have hope and maybe a little bit of belief that that's where we're headed, that it's going to be James's job still, but Darius does not get disrespected.
Robert says Tomlin traded Pickens because of his immaturity. I acknowledge he sat on the bench to start the game for Dallas last week, but 9 and 144 would look good along with Metcalf. Maybe there were underlying problems unknown to cause his trade, but he had to be worth more than an additional used mop. I don't think it was unknown. I think it was very known. Like he showed up late for the Chiefs Christmas game. Remember that? And then didn't show up, broke curfew with CeeDee Lamb We saw that story come out from Dallas. By the way, CeeDee Lamb saying, "I can hold my liquor" is one of the greatest quotes of all time. To just publicly lay it out there like that. I love that quote that he put, because there was this rumor that he was puking in the bathroom at Red Rocks or something. He said, "That's disrespectful. I can hold my liquor." Well, you can't tell time. That's the problem. You and Pickens both, and that's why they got suspended. It's not suspended, but benched to start the game against the Raiders. Yeah, he would look great with Metcalf. Now, the problem is, would he be carping about getting more passes thrown his way? There seems to be enough to go around for CD and Pickens in Dallas. Would there be in Pittsburgh? They don't run enough plays. Perhaps they could stay on the field longer if they were converting first down with those two, but there are just so many variables about why it probably wouldn't have worked out as well here as it is there.
Can I point out one thing that made me sort of frosted me about Kay Adams' statement? And that is that the Cowboys are under 500. Like, if the Cowboys were 8-2 and leading the NFC East, okay, then maybe you could make a case that it's the worst trade, blah, blah, blah. But if all we're doing is playing fantasy football and he's got his 58 catches and 908 yards, so that's why it's a bad trade. Hey, he hasn't made the Cowboys any better. They're just as bad this year as they were last year. I think they're 4-5-1 now, if I remember right. And they were 7-10 last year. So they're just as bad as they were before. It's not, and in a much lesser division. The Eagles are somewhat struggling. The Commanders are not good at all, and the Giants are a disaster, and you're not any better. So don't tell me that George Pickens has changed the franchise in Dallas. They stunk, now they stink. That's not enough to say this is the worst trade ever.
One more quick one. Got this one about Mason Rudolph, and it comes to us from, let's see here if I can find it again, William, who says, "Mason Rudolph and his mustache look a lot like Freddie Mercury. Wouldn't it be great if Rudolph could sing 'We Are the Champions' at the end of the season?" Yes, it would, but I would settle for the hammer to fall on the Chicago Bears on Sunday if he plays. And I don't care which quarterback it is. Just give me the hammer to fall to finally beat the Chicago Bears in Chicago. "Somebody Love" was always my favorite Queen song, by the way, Mike. Just in front of hammer to fall. So
I like the song they did with David Bowie, "Pressure." And there's going to be a lot of pressure on a lot of players Sunday afternoon.
What do you have for a pick?
Man, I picked the Steelers to win last week, and they did. And I have not had a great track record in that area, and I'm not running from it. But because I'm on a roll with that one-game winning streak, I'm going to go with the Steelers winning 23-21.
All right, got a prop for me?
I do. I'm going to go Caleb Williams, who we've talked about a lot. His rushing prop is only 22.5 yards. I have to think he gets outside the tackles a couple times and goes for 23 or 24 at least.
I'm going to take Bears 29-27. Like I said, I think what they're good at offensively is counter to what the Steelers are good at defensively. So I think they put some points on the board and they keep the ball a long time. I've got DeAndre Swift over his rushing total at 56.5. So those are my props. That's my pick. I'll take the Bears to win this one 29-27. And I think the perpetual losing continues in Chicago. But hopefully I'm wrong. And maybe there's some truth to that "who have they beaten" thing, which if I'm going to pin my hopes to something, it's that. I'll go with the Lee Flowers paper champions route here. Who have you really beaten? We'll see you next week, Mike. Just for folks, we're going to kind of figure this out, but we are leaning towards probably doing the show on Wednesday in advance of Thanksgiving next week. That's the game plan right now, is to do the show Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We'll put it out on Twitter. We'll let you know. But the goal is Wednesday, Thanksgiving here. And if not, we'll figure it out. But Wednesday, Thanksgiving is the plan right now to get you ready for the Bills game. This is the Friday Football Show. Thanks to Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Thanks to Chris for producing and Mike DeCourcy as well. Meet me at Mike's.